Thanks for being here, everybody. Appreciate it. We're in John chapter 6 tonight. So we finally finished chapter 5 after 20 weeks in chapter 5 or something.
Are you recording?
I am recording. All on my own, I did that.
Surprise.
Y'all proud? Remember that, Chad. My memory. Still there, buddy.
First time
Still there.
First for everything.
There it is. You're right. There it is. All right. So remember what happened in John chapter 5? It's been 2 weeks ago. What's the big event that's going to change the course of history?
Healing on the Sabbath.
Yeah, he healed a lame man on the Sabbath. How long he'd been lame? Remember? 38 years, yeah. So this monumental event happens, and immediately it draws the frustration, the anger of the Jews, so much so that what's their plan? Kill him, right? So again, they just get mad and get disgusted with him, and decide that he wasn't the kind of prophet they thought he was. They decided to kill him. That's what it says in chapter 5, verse 18. This was why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. So things have really progressed along in Jesus's frustration. So remember, he's kind of going between Galilee and Jerusalem, and things aren't as bad in Galilee because the religious structure is not as strong up there. But every time he comes down to Jerusalem, which he's just on normal basis going to come down there 3 times a year for the feasts, he runs into this problem with the Jews. And you can see that this healing on the Sabbath seems to be a deliberate act on his part to challenge them, to see if they were willing to consider this, and obviously they weren't. So that's where we end chapter 5. We talked about comparing following the law with doing the will of God. Following the law was, in this case, specifically about seeking the praise of men. I compare my godliness against other people and against how they keep the law, and that's how I determine how righteous and how good I am. Jesus said, when you do that, you seek the glory of man, not the glory of the Father. And then the other side, if I'm just seeking the will of the Father, then I'm not doing comparisons, how much better I am than other people. I'm comparing myself to God, or in this case to Jesus. That's the comparison we want to have. And that's where he's challenging, because all Jesus is concerned about is doing the will of his Father. That's how he's measuring whether he's successful or not. Does he do the will of the Father? And so by extension, I think we talked about that a lot, that's where we need to be about. We need to be about asking ourselves, do we do the will of the Father? Not just have we kept the law. Okay. Chapter 6, verse 1. After this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. So remember chapter 5, the healing of the man on the Sabbath, that was done in Jerusalem near the temple. And so now he's back to Galilee. Now, again, as we read this, it doesn't seem like much time has taken place, but I think we'll see here in a minute that we get a time period here, and we see it's been longer than what we maybe think. After this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a large crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was doing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. Now flip back to chapter 2, verse 13, and you'll find in chapter 2, verse 13, when he cleanses the temple, he's there at the Passover. In chapter 5, he's there for another feast. It doesn't tell us which ones, but chapter 5, verse 1, after this, there was a feast of the Jews. So by the time we get to the feeding of the 5,000, it's been a year since he first went into the temple and cleansed it. So he's at least the next Passover. So that means we're somewhere in the second year of his ministry. So again, John, it seems like this just happens a few days later, but we've had a year pass from chapter 2 to chapter 6 here, at least a year. Now again, the Passover is not this day because they're in Galilee, but it's at hand. It's right around the time of the Passover. Now, why were they following him? Large crowds?
The miracles.
Yeah, the miracles. Now, again, when you go back to the healing of the official son back in chapter 4, it was the second sign in verse 54. This was now the second sign that Jesus did when he'd come from Judea to Galilee. So again, some time has passed. So either he's done a lot of other signs, or where would they have seen him do the signs? Where do we know from John where he did a lot of signs? Where at? In Jerusalem, Judea. Right. So how, if that's where it was, let's just say he'd only done 2 signs in Galilee up to this point, then how did they see the signs? Yeah. Why would they have been down in Judea? The feast, right? It's not just Jesus that's keeping the feast, right? The Jews are getting this migration down to Jerusalem. And every time there's a feast there, Jesus goes down there and things get stirred up. So either that or he's done other miracles since John chapter 4, and it's just not recorded. But they've seen now a number of signs. So when he's in Galilee, he gets this large crowd that's following. So he's gaining in popularity, not with the Jewish leadership. They want to kill him. But the rank and file Jewish people don't want to kill Jesus. They see what he's doing. They're benefiting from all the things that he's done. And so they're interested in following him. So he's up on a mountain. He's with his disciples. And in verse 5, lifting up his eyes then and seeing that a large crowd was coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat? And he said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. So what's he testing Philip on? Faith, or what else?
That he's got
Describe
to
it
handle.
more. Huh?
That he can handle it.
Okay. That we're not worried. Why are we worried about food? We got Jesus with us. Now, maybe they thought that because every time they needed food, clearly Jesus wasn't making food for them to eat. So I think, he's testing him to see if Philip would say, oh, well, Master, if you want us to have food, you'll provide it. And to see if he can make that connection. But I don't think it's that Philip should have known, because every time they got hungry, Jesus made food appear out of nowhere. Or it would have taken away, I think, from this miracle. But he's just wanting to see, right? He's testing Philip. Or are you aware of what I can do? You've seen a lot of things from me, Philip. Are you now in tune to that? Whatever the situation is, I can take care of it. I can handle it. And so Philip doesn't do too good, and that he says, where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat? I'm sorry, verse 7, Philip answered him, 200 denarii would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. So how does Philip see the situation? Yeah, 200 denarii, and they think that's about 250 days worth of work, something like that, to do that. So almost 3/4 of a year's worth of wages to provide food. So Philip's like, I don't know what we're going to do, because we don't have this much money, and it would take a lot of that for each of them just to have a little, much less for them to be full. So Philip doesn't pass the test. Again, I don't think we should be too hard on Philip. It's just they still don't make the connection that Jesus can do anything, because these things astound them every time, where they kind of got used to that. So in one sense, the crowds are seeking him and following because of the signs. In one sense, maybe you might say they believe in Jesus more than his own disciples, but it's a shallow belief, as we'll see. In verse 8, one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many? So Andrew doesn't get it either, does he? Again, it must have been hard for them every day to be with Jesus, and every day run into just things in life. Where are we going to eat today? Where are we going to sleep tonight? And not see them always fulfilled miraculously by Jesus, to know when the time that he was going to do it was. So they're just oblivious, it seems like. They're just like, we've got this physical problem that we can't handle. And so what Jesus has typically done is, the bigger the problem, the more he tends to step up and do something about it, because it's so powerful to show his power and his strength. And he's using physical things to teach things about spiritual things. We've seen that, right? There's a connection a lot of times to the healings that we see, at least recorded, between doing the healing and providing some spiritual meaning to it, or some greater meaning to it. And that's what he's going to do here. All right, verse 10. Jesus said, have the people sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. So there's 5,000 men. We say the feeding of the 5,000. but it's 5,000 men. So you think it's wrong to assume there'd be 10,000 people there or more? I mean, think about it. If it was going to take almost, a year's wages to feed everybody, then there was more than a few hundred people. Now, I haven't figured it out. To feed 5,000 people today, what would that cost, you think? $20 per person? You could do it less than that, maybe 15. But if you said 20, so that's $50,000. So that's over $50,000. So 5,000 would take some people their full year's wage or 3/4 of a year's wage. That's about the same, isn't it? It's not that much different. So when you think about that many people, even if there is just 5,000 men, if they're going to feed the women too, which probably they are, then you can imagine it would take a large sum of money to accomplish this. So again, this event, this feeding of 5,000 is mentioned in the other gospels. And it's, I think, one of only one or two events that are miracles that are recorded specifically in all four of the gospels. But he brings them in. So why do we need to know the number? Why does John give us the number?
Probably showed us the significance of the miracle.
Yeah. Would it be pretty powerful if you fed 10 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish? I mean, it'd still be pretty impressive, Hey, that's and then there was 12 baskets left over. That would still be a miracle. It'd still be very impressive. But the sheer quantity of this miracle maybe is greater than any miracle Jesus ever does. And the way he does it is particularly powerful. All right, verse 11. Then they took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as many as they wanted. And when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, gathered up the leftover fragments that nothing may be lost. So they gathered them up in 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. I read that and I get just this time it hit me for some reason. There doesn't seem to be any fish left over, does there? It was 12 baskets full of barley loaf fragments. So the fish must have been really good. They ate every bit of the fish. But there's barley loaves left over, 12 baskets. Now, maybe it shouldn't be taken that literally. But what's impressive about this? It's obvious, but what really stands out about this miracle? Huh?
The generosity.
Okay. Yeah. That he saved somebody a lot of money by feeding them all. So that's an easy thing to miss, but this provided a great financial benefit to the people in the sense of they didn't have to collect the money to do this or whatever. So Jesus does something that is not just big in the sense of biologically or physically amazing, but he does it in the sense of it provided a great physical need to people, right?
I think he was being merciful too, because if there was a bunch of fish left over after a day or two, it'd start stinking.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So maybe they could have carried the barley loaves with them a while, but the fish would have been harder to do that. Justin.
I mean, it sounds like from where they are, and if we can kind of smash this up with some of the other accounts, like there isn't another way to do this. Like even if you were to if you take 5,000 people into McDonald's today, they can't feed them. There's not enough stuff at the place to feed that many people. It's just not equipped for it.
Right.
You have to have like a Disney World style kitchen and
or 20 restaurants in a little area.
Right. And that's today. I mean, imagine if they had a restaurant or an inn or someplace you could go, they're not equipped to feed even probably 100 people, much less 5,000. It just isn't a possibility. There just isn't a way to do this at this point, except by miracle, which is the thing that I was thinking is they have been following him to the point where they have abandoned all sufficiency, right? Like they've seen a miracle and they just started following Jesus, and then he went to this other place, and that's where they went. They weren't prepared for days and days and days of travel. They just left when they saw what he was doing, and he left, and now they find themselves in no man's land without anything, right? There is some trust that has to be a part of that, seeing what's going on and this desire for something else.
So do you think the crowd by this time, but even before seeing this, just you're saying just had enough confidence to follow him and say he's just going to take care of whatever it is, maybe more than his disciples had.
I mean, you kind of have to, because at some point you're going to be like, okay, well, if we we go to the next place. I know we can't get food there. I know this area. Like, I need to go back home and make some lunches for us to have meals, right? Like, I need to make a different plan. But nobody ever did that. They just kept following him until they get to this place where they're hungry.
Yeah. And what we may be seeing too is that there was no preparation for a crowd that large, that they didn't expect to have that great of number of people. And maybe this is the if you were to chart Jesus's popularity, this may be the spot by which the crowds were larger than they ever would be. And they are following him with the trust that Justin is talking about at a level that we're never going to see again in his ministry through this. And that might be why Jesus does and goes through what we see here in chapter 6. Yeah, that's a good point. Did you ever hear it, Robert?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning there, he turns to Philip, and I don't know if it might be a stretch from what I've looked at, but Philip being from Bethsaida, that this might be his region, so he's going to step to Philip and ask him, since he's familiar with the area.
Could be.
And then for him to feed everyone, like they weren't sufficient in providing an answer, so he provides it, and then he gathers up. He's a true conservative so there's nothing wasted.
Mhm.
And then he even provides 12 baskets, which would provide a basket for each of the disciples.
Yeah, or for the people again to eat later.
Right.
Yeah, again, I think Justin's point's good too, is that if you were in Jerusalem, when the feast came, you had hundreds of thousands of people that would enter the city. Some people would say there'd be 1 million people. They would have had resources to take care of gigantic crowds, but they knew it was coming. They'd be getting ready, right? Okay, next week's the Passover. We got to order in all this food, stock it up, and all the little restaurants or whatever would have had inns, would have had that. This is Galilee. Big crowds don't go to Galilee 2 or 3 times a year. There's nothing that would draw that to this area. These are fishing villages, There are bigger towns here, but they're not in Caesarea. They're up, right around the lake. And so there is this thing that, there's just no planning that's gone into this. And I think part of it is it's caught them off guard because of what's been happened. The other thing is that Jesus makes something out of nothing. When he changed the water into wine, he at least has water there, and the same quantity of wine comes out of water. So you have an equal mass of wine with water with an equal mass of wine. Here we have matter being created over and over. And not only that, you have more by a large abundance than you started out with. So the duplication of matter is what he's doing here. This is, this is Star Trek-esque, where they could put something in a replicator, could make things out of something, right? You just give it the pattern and it could make things. That's always cool about Star Trek. Just tell the replicator what you want. So Jesus is like replicating, some fish and some barley loaves and just multiplying them to the point. So is there a quantity by which he couldn't feed? No. See, that's the idea. It's not like, okay, I only have enough power to make this many fish and this many barley loaves. How are we going to do it? It's like, just start passing it out. And whatever, if another 5,000 people show up while we're doing this, or another 500, don't worry about it. Just keep passing it around. But not only so what if he supplied 1 barley loaf and 1 fish per person? That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Is that what he did? No. This y'all's kind of thing. It's Golden Corral, boys, for barley and loaves right here. It's keep going up there and getting all you want and having a take-home bag, right, when you get finished. So I think it says what? Jesus doesn't just barely. It's like the lame man, right? He didn't just make his leg better, or if you put a brace on it, he could walk now. No, he was completely healed. Jesus doesn't do partial healings, partial feedings. He does everything with abundance. What's the spiritual lesson?
God provides more than is needed.
Yeah,
It's an abundance.
think about that. Later on, he's going to call himself the bread of life. Is he just the bread of life and we barely scrape by and we're almost starving right before we just barely get into heaven? Is that the bread of life that he is? No, he's the bread of life that's honey buns. You eat it and you just get fat. You don't stay skinny on it. If you take in Jesus, there is an abundance and overflowing of grace and mercy. Man, that's incredible. And I think those are the subtle things in these miracles that we see. God just doesn't provide barely for his people. He provides in abundance. And so what he's saying is, what? I can give you what? More than you could ever need. I don't care what it is. I can provide for whatever you need in abundance. Do you need comfort? I can provide comfort with 12 baskets of comfort left over. Do you need hope? I can give you hope with buckets full of hope left over. I mean, that's the message that we should see in this. Do you need healing in any area of your life? From John 5, I don't care what day it is, I can provide you with healing. What do you need healed in your life? Do you need the shame of your past healed? I can do that. Jesus provides for the needs of the people physically here in great abundance. And the lesson is what? That we take from that is, if he can supply physical food that way, what can he do to us spiritually and provide for us? Joe?
Just find it interesting though that it's fish and barley loaves and not, filet mignon and cheesy mashed potatoes. So he provides an abundance. And, we might look at this story and say, boy, why does it have to be just plain fish and some barley loaves? Why can't Jesus make, this well-seasoned food? And so then I look at my life, well, God, you're supposed to provide in abundance. Why don't I have this car or this house or this job or whatever it might be, these clothes? And I started looking at God as just a vending machine of all these things I want, when he says, no, I'm going to give you abundance of the things that you need. And most importantly, what you need is life.
Right.
So you're going to have life abundantly.
And he says that, right?
Exactly. But we get caught up in the material world and start getting frustrated with God when we don't get what we want or what we think we need.
Right.
He says, why aren't you grateful for what I've given you so abundantly?
Yeah, so as we go through the chapter, we're going to see that when you only see this as physical stuff, then after a while, fish and barley loaves aren't enough. It's, okay, that was great, but we're going to need something else. Spiritually, if we can see this spiritually, though, what we'll see is that's all we need. I mean, that's more than what we need to sustain us. And look, if you're hungry and you can't go anywhere to get food, then you're really happy to get fish and barley loaves. I mean, you're happy because what? You are in an abundant need. But when we stop seeing ourselves in abundant need, then like Joey said, those things aren't enough anymore. So physically, these people could see we're in abundant need. He's going to try to get them to see. Can you see that spiritually, though? Can you see you're in that need spiritually? You see, can the healthy people see that they need healing, not just those that are lame? Because the real people who are lame and couldn't get the healing were the Jewish leaders. It wasn't the lame man at the pool. So can we see that? Can I just be satisfied with what God gives me? But can I see that I'm in desperate need? There's nowhere else to get food. Where are we going to buy food for this many people? How in the world could we supply what we need to in our lives without God doing that? And I think that's the mindset he's trying to get us to see. So they have this great. Was there another hand? Did I miss Justin?
The thing that I keep thinking about with this level of abundance, and this proves that he's God, is when God sent the quail to the Israelites, and he was like, it's going to be coming out of your nostrils. Like, I'm going to give you so much quail, you're going to hate it. Like, I'm going to make you sick with quail. But this idea that he can just, I can just fill you up on that. Like, I don't know if that story popped into their heads or only into mine, but I mean, only God can do this. This thing that you're seeing is a thing that only God can do.
Yeah. And although later they're going to connect it with Moses feeding him, it's also connected with, like the feeding of the widow and the oil in the jar not running out. So this is things that he's doing that's connected with the greatest prophets of the Old Testament. And so again, if they're connecting things, they're going to say he's not just a prophet. He's doing things the greatest prophets could never do. Because while a widow got fed and her son, it didn't feed 5,000 men plus, and there wasn't 12 baskets left over. So Jesus takes what's done by any of the prophets of the Old Testament and just extends it to an absurd limit. And I think that's the other thing they're supposed to get. I'm telling you, I'm the greatest prophet. Later on, I'm the greatest prophet that's ever lived. And I've shown it by what I've done. Will you accept it? That's the challenge. Okay, so verse 14, when the people saw the sign that he'd done, they said, this is indeed the prophet. Now, who are they referring to there?
Moses.
Probably Moses, yeah, because he's called, in Deuteronomy 18, God will raise up a prophet like me. So the idea of the prophet, when they said that, they're probably thinking, again, and we see later on, they're probably thinking about Moses. This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world. This is who Moses said was going to come. This is the prophet like Moses. And that's probably why the discussion then becomes later about comparing Jesus to Moses, because they're saying this is him. They're convinced. If they believe he's the prophet, then they believe he's the Messiah. This is a pretty amazing. This isn't one person who comes to that conclusion. This is the whole of this gigantic crowd believes that he's the prophet. In fact, verse 15, perceiving then that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. Are they convinced?
Yes.
Yeah. And they're going to make him king. What does that mean in their mind, do you think? They're going to make him king.
Take the throne of David.
Yeah. And they're excited because this is it. This is when we are going to take our land back and we are going to show that we are God's people and the time has arrived. So why doesn't Jesus embrace that?
That's not what he was here for. He was here for his kingdom.
Okay, but did you think about John laying this case out for Jesus? If you were on the opposite side, what might you say about this?
You do exactly what they were trying to do.
You do exactly what they're trying to do, or maybe he really doesn't have this kind of power and this kind of sustainability. Maybe he can't handle it. Maybe all these promises have just been for naught. So, I think if we're just, again, trying to think about this is presenting the case and trying to look at it from both sides, this doesn't look good for Jesus, that they're ready to make him king, which you think that's what he's come to do. He's come to get them to follow him, and they're coming to make him king. And what does he do? He goes up on the mountain and hides from them. Doesn't sound like much of a king, does it? I mean, is that the kind of king that's going to lead us? If he's really who he says he is, why is he going away? Why is he hiding from us? So again, I think you could, as John lays this out, he's trying to give us this true picture. It's Jesus does not embrace this, but we don't know yet why not. Either he doesn't have the ability to really be the king, or like Jerry said, he's not ever going to be that kind of king. And he's not going to give in to that and try to embrace it. In fact, every time they push up against that, he challenges them and tries to get them to see it differently. Those are the two options. All right, I want to get to the second miracle. This to me, I call this the missing miracle, because in John's case, we think about the feeding of 5,000, then boom, right into the discussion. But then there's this other little miracle sandwiched in between. So when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and started across to Capernaum. So they're going to go across the Sea of Galilee, which is a big sea, and to go to Capernaum. And it's now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. So they I think they're used to Jesus kind of going away sometimes, and they're like, okay, we're going to go on to Capernaum, and he'll eventually meet us there. The sea became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were frightened. Now, I don't think we should necessarily think this is 3 or 4 miles from shore. It may be in the bad weather, they're tacking along parallel with the shore. Either way, it doesn't mind, but some people will make a big deal that he didn't just walk on water, he walked on water for 3 or 4 miles. I don't know that we should assume that. But they're out fighting to get to Capernaum out on the Sea of Galilee. Why are these guys having so much trouble in a little bit of bad weather? Does that surprise you? Scott, would that surprise you if you got out trying to row across Doctor's Lake and didn't make it? Would that be a shock? I mean, would it really? Are you pretty good at boating and navigating and stuff like that? Yeah, I've been fishing with Clint. It wouldn't shock me at all to go out with Clint and get stuck that way. I mean, didn't one time y'all get out there and the radio didn't work or something, Russ? Or oh yeah, there's a story about that. I know. Yeah, one time I took my lovely family to the Bahamas, and let me tell the story because Missy will mess it up if she tells it. And I'd gone down there a couple times, but I'd never been down there by myself, and I'd never driven the boat. So you rent a boat where you fly into the island, and then you take a boat out to the place where we stayed called Hopetown. And so, I understood how to do that because normally you kind of go around this little part of the island, you come around, you can see there's a lighthouse on Hopetown. It's pretty easy to see. Well, we come around and there's a thunderstorm over there. And you can't really make it out. And I think I see the lighthouse. And so I start heading to it. Then I'm like, no, that's not it. I think that's it. Start heading to that. Before you know it, we are way out in the middle of the Bahamas somewhere and don't have a clue where we're at. And so it's storming too. It's blowing rain. Missy and the kids are under a blanket or something in the front of the boat trying to keep the waves from splashing them. And the kids are crying or something. They're real little. And so we see a sailboat and we pull up to them. And they tell us, oh, no, you were going the wrong way. You needed to go back this way. So the good news is we made it there safely. But the bad news is if I told Missy a story about me going out to the Bahamas like that, she'd go, I can understand that, why you couldn't make it out there, right? She could see that. But why would that surprise us about these men? Many of them are fishermen. They're used to being out, on the open water. They're used to dealing with bad weather. And so when they are struggling and they're afraid, if you go out with somebody who's really good in the ocean and he's afraid, then you should really be afraid. That's just, so when you think about Matthew's a tax collector. Now, again, on The Chosen, you can imagine how Matthew on The Chosen would have reacted to this. But even if Matthew weren't quite that wimpy or however to describe it, he's still a tax collector. He doesn't go out of the way. And he's around all these fishermen. So you think about getting the boat, you feel safe. And then suddenly they're afraid. So it's bad out there. And the Sea of Galilee's big. I mean, I've been out on Kingsley Lake before when it got bad. And Kingsley Lake's not near the size of the Sea of Galilee, but it gets bad. And so they're frightened because of the waves and because of the winds blowing. And he sees them and he goes out to them. All right, so they rode through from where they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat. Now, if you read some of the other accounts, it says he was passing by. Now, this is really interesting, and I didn't realize this. Look real quick, turn over to Job chapter 9. And I'd never seen this before or heard this, but I think this is something that it seems like Greg would point out in one of his classes. Job chapter 9, as he describes God. So Job, Psalms of David. And look at verse, we start in verse 4. It's talking about God. This is Job talking. He is wise in heart, mighty in strength, who has hardened himself against him and succeeded. Talking about God. He removes mountains and they know it not, when he overturns them in his anger. And who shakes the earth out of its place, and its pillars tremble? Who commands the sun and it does not rise? Who seals up the stars? Who alone stretched out the heavens and trampled the waves of the sea? And what I've read about this is in the Hebrew translation of the Septuagint, the translation of Hebrew scriptures into Greek, that it reads exactly like that is what in Mark's account talks about and says it literally the same way he walked on water. So if that's the case, Why is this here? What's this showing us?
It's God.
Jesus is God. It's subtle. And then even, we won't go in and read Exodus, but it talks about passing by. He wasn't walking to the boat. Again, when you read Mark's account, he was passing by the boat and they saw him. He wasn't walking to the boat, he was passing by the boat. And they draw that that's the same language used when God reveals his glory to Moses, remember? And he has to hide in the rock and he passes by, his glory passes by Moses, Exodus 33, I think it is. Again, that's God's glory. So I think that just was really interesting to me that John includes this story, because really when we get down into the grips of the rest of the story, it's back focusing on the feeding of the 5,000. I'm the bread of life. He's going to connect that. It doesn't mention this part at all. But what John does right after they want to make him king, John subtly shows us this miracle and connects it with these Old Testament statements about God the Father, so that we wouldn't think that Jesus can't be king. He's God. He's God. And just as Job said, you know how powerful God is? He can set the stars up. He can decide when the sun's going to come up, and he can walk on the water. And so here's Jesus out walking on the water, showing his what? His glory. The glory of the only begotten, the glory of his Father. Justin?
Yeah, I mean, later on, when they find him in verse 25, they're going to say, when did you come here? And he doesn't even talk to them about it.
Yeah.
It's like, that miracle wasn't for you.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the feeding of the 5,000. That was a different thing. Like that wasn't even, that miracle happened. It wasn't even concerning you, right? Like, let's get back to what we need to talk about. But it's just like, it's nothing in a sense to him.
I know. And so who was this miracle for? I mean, clearly feeding the 5,000 is for all these people. They all saw what Jesus did. That's why they want to make him king. But who's this miracle for?
The apostles.
The 12, it seems like, right?
And us.
Yeah, and all of us. Isn't that cool? We get something that the 5,000 don't get. I don't know that they ever hear about the story till the Gospels were written. But we get this for us, that Jesus is God, that he can walk on water. But of course he can, because he created the water and he controls the stars. And there's nothing that's been created except through Jesus. Without him, nothing has been created. He's God. And so John just subtly just kind of squeezes this in. And he says to them in verse, they saw him walking on the sea, verse 19, and coming near the boat, and they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they were glad to take him into the boat, I imagine. And immediately the boat was at the land to which they were going. And like Justin says, on the next day, the crowd that remained on the other side of the sea saw that there had been only one boat there, and that Jesus had not entered the boat with his disciples, but that his disciples had gone away alone. Other boats from Tiberias came near the place where they had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. So when the crowd saw that Jesus was not there, nor his disciples with themselves, got into the boats and went to Capernaum seeking Jesus. And when they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you come here?" And like Justin says, he ignores it. He doesn't say anything. Jesus answered them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you are seeking me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves." Why didn't he tell them about it? It wasn't for them, but why wasn't it for them? Maybe. Would it have done any good? I mean, would they like, "Oh, wow, then we're completely think differently about you because you walked on water"? They'd just been fed by him. There's no way to one-up this to a point so that they will have faith and they will believe who he says he is. So it's almost, again, this is how I'm reading into it. It's almost like I'm not going to waste my time telling you about this. This is saved for people who are going to believe it. And people who can see deeper into who I am other than y'all. And they still want to make him king. That's why they chase him. They're not willing to let him go because they think they found the prophet. Aaron?
Yeah, from Mark's account,
think that adds a lot of insight into what this was for. It was for the disciples specific, or the apostles specifically, because it says that their hearts had become hard. They had not gained insight from the feeding of the. This was just another miracle to them. They were almost desensitized
Yeah.
to Jesus's
Isn't that amazing?
greatness.
How could they?
God's
How could you get
glory is not
desensitized to
rubbing
that?
off on them anymore.
Yeah.
So this kind of was like a wake up call to them and saying, hey, like this is, I have the ability to command space, time, nature, everything. This is my creation. I was there.
Yeah. And as we go through this, we're going to find out, has any of it really mattered to them, or are they just like these people? I mean, this is a real test of that to see. But yeah, I think that's right. I think that's the way they do it. All right, I don't want to go any further. We're just about a couple minutes, I think, out of time. Go ahead, Robert.
And he's been up for a while, LJ.
Oh, I'm sorry, LJ.
The entire class.
You got to wave, bro.
The entire class.
Oh, I did.
Hey, Kathy, don't speak unless I'm calling on you, okay?
Well, I'm trying to remember, I had quite a few comments, but I think to kind of sum them up though is.
See, when I don't call on people, they just quit commenting. That's the
Yep.
great thing about it.
But, John says, like, these things are written that you may believe, right? And it's easy, I think it's easy for us as Monday morning quarterbacks, to tell them what they should have done, what they should have believed, how they should have thought. But all these things that he keeps doing, he keeps showing that he's God, but it's to point them back to Isaiah 9:6. For us, a child was born, he would be called Mighty God. Like, this was something they were supposed to be looking for, right? They were supposed to be looking for a child to be born as a man who would then be God. Well, what would be the evidence of that? Well, things being created from nothing, walking on water, calming the sea, all these things that he does over and over again to show I'm exactly who you're supposed to be looking for.
Yep.
But they had their blinders on.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent point. All right, so for next week, read Deuteronomy chapter 8, because you really need that to get the background for what he's going to talk about in the next section. This is where we really get into some good insights into Jesus and what he wanted to accomplish. All right, thank you.